Well, I want to say good evening to those viewers of the Houston Media Source program, Public Affairs, Public Access. And we are broadcasting certainly from Houston, Texas, around the world right now. And I certainly would hope that our Houston audience would appreciate this information that's been shared on the public access channels for over 30 years. This has been a tremendous week of tragedy, heartache, ups and downs. We have now buried a Houston police officer who was tragically murdered, and certainly we send our prayers out to his family, friends, and those other officers who share that grief. It was a tremendous tragedy as well for a number of teenagers in our city who have been either killed or shot. I know we've had several situations where the increase of crime and the activity of using guns and any number of violent tendencies have stretched our community's resolve to understand why. But of course, if you don't know, in the state of Texas, the governor has allowed every citizen in the state of Texas to have a gun, a weapon. And so you no longer in the state of Texas need to even have a permit. You don't need to have training as of September the 1st. And of course, this is the end of Suicide Prevention Month. Awareness of that tragedy of individuals who take their lives for any number of reasons. And if those of you who have listened to me over the years, you know that my focus has tried to be towards the awareness of addressing mental illness and, of course, evil, as my training as a minister has taught me that evil is real. So tonight I'm going to have some noted guests. I certainly would like for them to chime in and give the solutions, ideas that they have, because I know all of us are somewhat perplexed. I see my good friend, Dr. Carolyn Shabazz, Evans-Shabazz. She's background is in mental health, and certainly as a former educator, now currently actively involved, City Council Representative District D, and Charles X. White has been a long-time legend in our community as it relates to getting civic club leaders, individuals, clergy. But we have some ideas or some thoughts. So one of the things I like to say, Dr. Shabazz and Minister Charles X. White, we have solutions that sometimes aren't heard. And so we might be in that era now where some people might want to hear us. So let me be certainly happy to have Dr. Shabazz to chime in first, maybe give us an update with the city of Houston, which obviously is in the forefront of incidents, just like Chicago and New York. And so I want to say, first of all, thank you, Dr. Shabazz, for joining. And could you just be candid and help us to understand from your professional view, of course, as well as your community view, you know, as an individual who I know bleeds like any of us when we see these tragedies. You know, could you just help us in the audience, maybe?
Well, thank you, Dr. Gilmore, and I am certainly glad that you are still amongst the land of the living. And I pray that you will bless this earth for many, many more years. And certainly, it's always a pleasure to be with Charles X. White. He has some very well, his community engagement is just, has always been just awesome. And I know that he possibly has some suggestions, because I don't know if any of us have solutions other than the one solution that I know of is to tell people to vote, so that we can move people out with that mindset. Because to me, to allow people just a free for all to have guns is just unbelievable. Other than having a felony or whatever, everyone is allowed basically to carry a gun. Now, the other night there was a tragedy, but of course the young man was 17 years old and he should never have had a gun. But he was really trying to help some people who had become hostages in a hostage situation, and he became the victim. And so it's almost like I hate to even look at the news, because there are so many deaths and senseless deaths. I just recently went to visit my sister in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I noted that on their news they don't have any of that. You don't have any of that. Where in Houston you have murder after robbery after murder after murder, and it's just really, really sickening. And so, of course, we always have to have the talk, but you have to wonder, why did they allow this in the first place? Why is this? Why was this legislation never passed? And I hate to think that it was done so that there could be a free for all on killing people who may walk by, who have, who may be carrying a gun. I believe in the Montrose area there was a African American male who was walking down the street and he had a gun, and they were just in an uproar, calling the police and whatever. And so, but that's the law that you passed. Those are the laws that our legislators passed, which means that they look at us differently walking down the street with a gun, and that's a cause for them to call the police. But that's not necessarily the case if it's a white guy walking down the street with a gun. And so you just really have to be wonder, why was this ever passed? Because now it's kind of like, we have all of these shootings, and so now, well, he had a gun, and so now you're making it legal to have a gun, but you're also making it legal to kill someone that may just be carrying a gun. So I'm real concerned, and it's just beyond me, and I'm really, really afraid of what's going to happen, or what the intent was in the beginning.
Well, I'm curious. I mean, I'm not as familiar as the circumstances, but when looking back, just like you made the statement about the 17-year-old had a gun, so I'm assuming that the person who was holding the people hostages had a gun. The
Yes.
17-year-old walks in with a gun, attempting to help those who were
Right.
hostile.
He walked in, it's my understanding that he walked in on a crime in progress. I believe the person had 8 people, and he was holding them hostage in a store, I believe over on Scott Street, which is in my district. And it's my understanding that he went in, to really save them. And it turns out that the person holding the gun, or having the gun, that went in there and was holding the people hostage, it's my understanding that he killed them. And so, that's just, here's a young man whose intentions were good, from my understanding, and now he's dead. And so it's just, being able to carry all of these guns is just really, really frightening. And so I don't have the solutions. I'm really, really interested to hear what Charles X. White has to say, because he's boots on the ground just as you. And so
Yeah.
I'd really like to hear, his perspective on this, as well as what he would uh, indicate as a possible solution.
That's
And again, here again, other than voting those out that are in there and revisiting this at another legislative session. I don't know of any other way to stop this and change this law.
Minister Charles X. White, could you give us your thoughts on that? That's one of your areas, and certainly I do have some other questions about that thought. Maybe we can get some kind of feedback. Talk to us a little bit. Open up your mic if need be, Charles, and give us some thoughts on that, if you could. Meantime, while he's getting that technical taken care of, I see Reverend Dr. Carl Matthews has joined us as well, and Charles is dealing with some technical issues, but the thought was, Reverend Matthews, about the shooting. There was a recent shooting where a 17-year-old got shot attempting to be a hero, I guess, based upon what Councilwoman Shabazz shared with us. And the young man, another man was holding some people hostages in the store. And then the 17-year-old obviously had a gun as well and came in to free them and ended up getting killed himself. And so what I was mentioning was the reality in the state of Texas that everybody, according to the governor, can have a gun. So I guess it goes to the idea, was this, in a thought, was this what the governor was thinking going to happen, that people could, quote unquote, take the law in their own hands, which in the case of a police officer, we saw this week that even one of their own could get killed in the line of duty. So maybe you could chime in on that, Reverend Matthews, while Minister White is getting his technical difficulties cleared up. Could you help us with that thought and your point of view about the solution?
Thank you, Dr. Yeah, thank you, Dr. No sound. Okay. Okay, great. I have no idea what the governor was thinking by passing such a insane bill to allow all citizens without any training, any exposure to weapons, to have access to weapons. Me, myself, took the class, and as a mature, responsible person, my takeaway is I even had no experience with how to handle a weapon. I'm not going to refer to it as a handgun. They are weapons, and they kill people. And with this bill that allows everyone to carry, I mean, it's just ludicrous, man. And so the only thing I can think of in terms of a solution or a potential solution is, my focus is always faith-based. We have many churches, small, large, medium, in our communities. And one of the things I think that we could do is to rally pastors and faith leaders to make a clarion call in the community to provide safe spaces and bring in certified, trained persons who know how to handle weapons to give training on how to handle weapons. I've spoken to several law enforcement who have that type of initiative and who is prepared to come into our communities and provide that type of training. And I think they need to be exposed to that. And I think that the faith could be very instrumental and helpful in bringing that type of training to residents in the community, and even those, I don't know, maybe youth, those who have it. But then we also know that there's an undercurrent and a market of weapons being sold in the community where youth don't have to have license, registration, training, or anything, and buy it on the black market. And so I'm not quite sure if that's the community responsibility to address that. I think that's more law enforcement responsibility to deal with that black market. That's
I would like. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
City and you know, yeah, you can't. Can everybody hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, so I think that okay, great. So I think that for me, I think our deacons and our leaders in our churches need to be trained. I think the message from the pulpit needs to be for parishioners to take accountability in their homes, to identify youth or carrying guns, or have access to guns, have that conversation in the home. And I think also it might need to be a demonstration. I don't know what that would look like, but for people to understand what weapons can do to a human person, to a human body. I mean, it's not a pretty sight. And then the after fact of how you're going to be affected once you have caused the death of someone, of human life. You know, I just think that needs to be a partnership, a partnership of training and development using law enforcement to bring that education to our community so our community can be responsible for weapons.
Dr. Gilmore, could I add something before Minister White gets on? You know, I think I made the statement, and we say, well, we don't know why that happened and why they passed that. But I'm just going to be real. First and foremost, NRA has moved to Texas, and they have a very, very strong presence. I believe that the current governor, who plans to run for re-election, is looking to have the financial support of the NRA made that decision, because you know they don't want any barriers actually to weapons for whatever reason. But I think that there's a political piece involved in this as well, because as I said, he's trying to run for re-election, and he may have a difficult time even getting through his own party because of some of the decisions that he has made. But I do believe that he's looking to get the support of the NRA, and it really doesn't matter what havoc that law has on people, and particularly people of color.
Mr. White, are you with us?
Yes, I hope I am.
I am. You will. Come on and chime. Obviously, that's been your area, one of your areas in the city. The whole city is your area. But what do you think? I mean, this.
Well, let me say I want to chime in and agree with. I'm glad I'm on the panel with this distinguished panel. For the political side, there are several tiers to this question that you ask. But from the political side, it appears to me that there is no political will or maturity to address long-standing issues like this, whether it's voting for gun legislation or whatever, redistricting. It appears to me that the leadership, black, brown, or white, or Asian, whatever, has not got the political maturity and the will and the finance to combat what they already know exists. You already know the boogeyman coming. The boogeyman lives here day and night. And you don't organize the people. Now with Reverend Matthews, what he said, I agree with you training the people in the church, but before you train the people in the church, we also need to train the politicians, and the politicians help train the people about what's important and why we need a coalition and a budget to fight something that's going to be detrimental to us. That's on the political side. I worked in the retail in Los Angeles, California in 1976, 75, and 77. And for the retailer, the question is for that store, and in 2 years on Compton, Central, Florence Avenue, and Normandy, working stores, Western Avenue as well, we were never robbed in the 2 years that I worked at those stores. We had a system that we checked people when they came in several ways. So the retailer may need some security training to keep himself a little more safer. That may help, may not help, but I think it's be more of a help than not. So that's my response on those. That's my 3 response on that matter.
That's an excellent observation in terms of the training. I think that's a factor. Let me go back to Reverend Matthews, because the church's role obviously has not been identified. I'm assuming from the perspective of how you put a solution on the table. I'm saying that because you had 2 people, and I want to be specific about this before I jump to another thought. You had 2 people, one who had the guns standing in the building to hold people hostage, right? You had, one of the people was holding people hostage. Then you got with 2 guns, by the way, they supposedly had 2 guns. Shabazz, you can clarify that for me, but supposedly the person had 2 guns. And the young man, 17, with a gun coming in to quote unquote rescue them. And from what I understand, the brief clip I did see, the store owner looked like he was just in neutral land. I think he, Mr. White, he might have even known the person with the 2 guns, because some of these stores have activity around them that's quite acceptable with these what they call these machines, these
slot machines.
What do they call?
Slot machines.
Slot machines. They have a number of these stores have slot machines. Don't ask me where that comes from, but I thought that we were a non-gambling state. Councilwoman Shabazz, I thought that the governor didn't pass on that, but these stores have slot machines. And I don't think they give it out candy when you hit all 7. So the stores are a breeding ground, if you would, for some of the underground activity in some of these communities. But my question really is, was this the intended purpose?
Dr. Gilmore, as you're talking, and I agree with what we've always talked about the application of responsibility from political leaders. Obviously, there's only a few, like our sisters, Councilwoman Shabazz and Ron Reynolds, that I just to mention a few, who have been diligent in their calling and their responsibility as leaders in our community from a political standpoint. But I think for me, I'm kind of tired of asking people to do for us what we're not doing for ourselves. And I think any leader on any level, even the faith leader or community leaders, we're going to have to roll up our sleeves and put some sweat equity in and come together in our community, bring businesses, faith leaders, community leaders, and have these conversations in our communities and talk about what we need to do to make our communities safer for our families and our children. And then I believe at that point, the politicians have to respond. Why? Because that's the voter base. So, my role as the new project coordinator for the Houston Minutes Against Crime is to send that message to the faith leaders, is to implement that type of process of implementation of taking responsibility in our communities, calling the businesses. We have to start setting standards in our own community, like we used to have in our community. when the black dollar circulated in the community. When we empowered each other, we knew one another, we knew our children, everybody knew the families, you understand? And so I think that not only brings some awareness of who we are, but know that we're present in the community and make us accountable for our community. And then we'll get the ear of those. And it's obviously that some people are just looking at the other way and don't care about what we're talking about or how we've been affected.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's been a factor that we've got to look at going into this new era. Councilwoman Shabazz, I know you in the work of the city, certainly District D has enjoyed a tremendous amount of increased technological, what do they call this, green, where the old Fiesta was, and
Right.
now
The Ion and the
okay,
Greenland. Right.
Ion. I'm assuming one of the intended purposes for that was to increase, the the what
The
uh,
technology presence and the business perspective
uh,
in the community.
but
That's just in a nutshell.
one of the ongoing crises, as we know, is the problem of homelessness driven by any number of mental illness. I think the data shows 65-70% of people who are homeless have some type of mental,
Mental illness.
which in our case we are 49th or 48th, I guess, in servicing. So I guess I guess what I'm trying to say is the level of creativity that the city of Houston has, and we as a whole need to have. Obviously, it needs to be increased. I think there was an incident recently where the mentally disturbed young man tragically killed a grandmother outside of a McDonald's, and they had some type of breakdown, but the community saw him. He went into 3 businesses, ended up tragically trying to carjack the grandmother, and she passed away. But it came out that he was a long history and mentally somewhat disturbed, just like the man who killed the police officer. Long history, which is an indicator, as you know, I mean, with a background in mental health, behavioral health. Where are we? I mean, where are we? Is that a discussion? Is that a priority in a city that's big? Like you said, you went to Lincoln to see your loved one, and all this wasn't on the news. I know that was kind of shocking to you.
Right. The most that I saw going on in Lincoln, there was a lady in a store trying to cough on everybody, who lost her job. But that was the extent of what I saw regarding anything of criminal. Oh yeah, she was coughing on people, with this COVID, and she was just going up coughing on people,
He
and
was a here, a coffee.
like coughing on people because she had COVID. Well, she didn't have COVID, but to tell people, yeah, I'm coughing on you or whatever. That's all. That's the extent I saw of criminal activity. The problem is, of course, he, people have rights, and it is so hard to make someone uh, seek mental health. And even if you commit them for a period of time, they are released at some point. Or you're a danger to yourself, or you're a danger to others. And they may use that criteria to get you in, but then they may stabilize you with medication or whatever, and then they put you right back out there. Because you have the right to not be confined in a mental institution. And so, I do think that we do have an opportunity to have captive audiences, so to speak, and avail themselves to medication and mental health, because we have the greatest mental institution in the Harris County Jail. And so what's happening, they have those that may have mental problems. They have them all in the general population. And consequently, either they do something to hurt someone, or in more cases, often than not, they are the ones that are subjected to being hurt. And so we're going to really have to look at that system. I know that it's very, very difficult to try to manage the many, many people that are in that system. But if they are there and have availed themselves to that system, perhaps it's incumbent on the system to use, whatever they have while they are in custody to try to help them. Now, I don't know if there's still any legal ramifications involving that, because, people may have to still sign consent, because they may not have been declared mentally incompetent. So it's just really, really a very difficult thing. But as I said, with the Harris County Jail being the largest mental health organization in the city, certainly, there's something that needs to be done. We may not be able to help them all. Some of the homeless people that are out there are there, and there's not very much we can do. We can offer them shelter, we can offer them food, we can offer them mental assistance. But, they may or may not avail themselves to that. But we need to really look at the large population of those that need mental help that are in the Harris County jails that may not have a choice regarding whether they're getting any intervention. So
I want to go back with that thought you just added to Minister Charles X. White. You mentioned about this lack of leadership wherewithal. I think you were saying, Minister White, is that one of the elements, the lack of, which leads us to the leadershiplessness?
Well, the black community, the
leadershiplessness.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The black community has been labeled with a political designation as at risk, high risk, unmet needs, vulnerable, low performing. It's hard for me to see a low performing school and not deal with the principal and not deal with the teachers and all blaming it on the students. So I'm saying that to say, no, yes, I am saying that there's no political will. When is the last time you heard of a blue ribbon task force that solved the problem? Blue ribbon means the best of the best. So you telling me that the problem I saw in Sunnyside, let's just say with prostitution, I still see it in Sunnyside today. Almost in the same spot. So you telling me with all these criminal doctorals and whatnot, they don't have a solution for certain type of things, and they want to feed us all the time, but don't feed us the white collar crime. They don't feed us other kind of crime. They just feed us the crime on us. So that void of leadership or low performing leadership, that goes across the board, because those are us at the bottom, like G-Man. With G-Man, I mean, what else does he need to do to get some direct funding?
Oh, you mean OG1? Okay.
What I say?
G-Man.
Oh, okay. That was in another era. OG1, I mean. Okay, that's it.
Well, I have worked closely with OG1 and Minister Robert, and in fact, I had a text, with him this morning, because what I am trying to do is get them a permanent building. And I did reach out to the police chief some time ago to ask him about that old storefront on Reed Road, to see if they could, first and foremost, get a permanent building where they don't have to take what they are trying to help the community with, where they don't have to go from this church to that church, or from this place to that place. And so when I reached out to Chief Fenner this morning, my days are mixed up. It may have been yesterday morning. He said he was checking on it, because I know that that's one of the things that they need as well, is a permanent location. And with it being right there in that Scott Street corridor, which is, which is something to deal with. Hopefully that can help them as well. I also supported a grant that Minister Robert was able to get to be able to, put in to have some interventions with some young people. I've done a few other things in regards to trying to get them financing. I have never been able to get them the full amount, but I have made a dent or two, because that really is important to me, that my district and people, period, are safe. But I don't have a budget that can substantiate what they need, but I am there, willing and able to support them on every hand, because they do have a 21-point plan, which I've been privy to. And then OG1, of course, he has his program, and I've supported his program where he goes to the funeral homes and tries to let them know.
Shabazz,
Yes, sir.
I may try to reach out to you and give you some possible additional information and pointers on how to get some funds.
I would welcome that.
And my point is this, and I'm not trying to be sassy, but I've been around a little while in different cities and seen different things happen. One of the key places for funding for city municipal government is community block grant money.
Okay.
And it's money that can be flexible enough to address anything G-Man said. And my point is, they don't necessarily need to look at name brand, look at who's on the ground, and you're gonna find G-Man being there that I know of for a long time. So I've seen it done. I mean, when the city, now I'm talking about the mayor now, okay? When the city needs to have the wheels turn, all the mayor got to do is pick up the phone. I saw Bob Lanier do it. I saw Kathy Whitmire do it. I saw Lee Brown do it. So I know what can be done in certain areas, and I'll share some of that with you. Maybe that'll help loosen up some ideas, because sometimes they won't tell you if you don't ask.
Well, I know that.
I welcome that.
I know I invited OG1. I don't know if he was able to get on the broadcast. I invited him. But
right. And Mr. White, I show, and I have a guy on this conference today with there are thousands of dollars that's coming through the city and county that's allocated for initiative and programs like OG skills development and so forth. And so I want to introduce my friend Mike Adams, who's with Son America, who has been doing some development.
Wait a minute before you introduce Mr. Adams. OG1, we've been talking about you.
Yes, sir.
I hope you heard those comments.
Oh, definitely, brother. I've been hearing. I've been listening. I've been listening well. First of all, let me thank you for being on the panel again. You know what I'm saying? And please pray for my family. You know what I'm saying? We're going through a big loss in the family here. So, but I'm just humbled to see that the company I'm with now, Unlimited Vision Aftercare, which is the wellness substance abuse treatment center that I've been at for the last 5 years, trying to do this transformation coming out of the prevention area that I've been in for the last 30 years, going towards dealing with this new mood and dealing with this opioid movement, knowing that the funding in this day and time is sad to see that most of your funding in that area of substance abuse went towards recovery coaching, dealing with white kids that's dealing with these opioids in this movement. So I've been working with, but now we're moving through this pandemic, we're moving towards dealing with mental health. We didn't change the name. It's called unlimited vision behavior health institution, where we're gonna definitely be on the ground dealing with trauma-informed training, dealing with people, teaching people how to deal with our community in a trauma-informed area, because even like Oprah Winfrey and the things that she went through to get us to identify what is causing the pain. I tell people all the time, it was a brother the other day that was in an argument at a gas station, and they was arguing about the dude bumped his car door. And then when he bumped his car door, they got into an argument. And we got to, in the community, look at these issues and say, why would you shoot this man 16 times? That's not anger. That's not anger when you unload your gun and put another clip in it and shoot a man 16 times. That's not anger. We got to understand this is rage we're dealing with, internal rage that's going back on the behaviors on what we're doing to trigger each other. And how do we deal with the trauma? You know, I worked in the Harris County Jail for like 12 years. I did the first offenders program up under Boris L. Miles when I was working for him as first offenders program. And as I went in to do the cognitive intervention program in the county jail, well, we have an attentive audience in there with young brothers. And the cognitive intervention plan was to deal with the thinking program until we go back and connect the thinking and make brothers feel safe in these areas that we're talking about, Sunnyside, South Park. They're trauma-informed. We'll only connect the dots back in the brain until we make the areas safe. And my plan in putting trauma-informed centers around the community is that when the brothers are released from jail, the first person that they meet is people like me with lived experience, teaching them how to survive in a neighborhood that's so traumatizing and can set off their triggers. Because again, we know that if we don't get back into family structure, a lot of these brothers like South Lawn, I've been hollering about South Lawn for the last 15 years, when these sisters are allowing these brothers to come out of the jail, lay on the couch without no future, sleep with the daughters, sleep with the sons, and traumatize the whole family. And I still get calls from the South Lawn and about the gang injunction, where the mothers are sleeping in the bathtub on top of their children. So I'm just glad and grateful that we're going towards this new thing and dealing with how do we deal with the trauma of our community and get these brothers to understand and break the shame. Because again, in the areas of trauma, it deals with depression. Black men do not talk about being depressed. You're being called a coward. You're just weak. You don't want to work. We don't deal with depression, but that's a form of trauma and depression. So until we break those stigmas, get deeply into telling the truth in the jails, in the schools, we are not going to change the behavior. You know what I'm saying? And Isaiah Carrier still have police officers talking about the after fact of what's going on in our community instead of dealing with the preventive problem that we need to deal with in our community. So I thank Dr. Shabazz for reaching out, helping me for the last, I done knocked on every politician's door in this city to try to help me deal with the issues to reproduce myself. I've been out 25 years. Something I've done right to survive out here in 25 years have been out that monster called the Harris County Jail and the prison industrial compound. So therefore, if I have the answers to working with young brothers, I have and that I can call in and put together like I was doing. I'm gonna leave it on this here. For 12 years, I was doing that workshop in a funeral home on a Saturday morning after Friday night with 300 young people calling themselves gang members, packed from wall to wall. Not a fight, not an argument. Stayed in there for about 4 or 5 hours and paid attention. So if that is the problem that we need to see that works, changes the mindset, and mothers are still asking me to do it today, we got to change the direction. Because again, with this gun law, every young brother that I talk to now is not going to leave their house without theirs. I don't care what we talk about, because that's their sense of protection. So we as adults, we as grown folks, I would love to pull, like I've been trying to do for the last 15 years, pull the community of 146 district, that 3rd Ward, Sunnyside, trying to pull the 286 churches together in that Sunnyside 3rd Ward area. I can't get 10 pastors to come to the table because I guess they look at me as being too radical. Can't keep his mouth shut. So until we break those kind of cowardly chains in our own community, it's not going to change, because I'm on the streets every day. I deal with specific job is working in the community, working with these brothers on the phone with them, because I'm working with them through their probation, I'm working with them through their parole. So I know that mindset in the group settings, that when they open up and talk about group settings, I know what they're talking about. And they're not talking about saving Black folks. They talking about what it's gonna take to them to survive in a world that's been so cold on them for the last 10 or 15 years.
Reverend Matthews, let me let you bring in your guest. I know you had a special guest dealing with some of the economic elements that, based on what OG1 said, talking to all these people, you would think he had that building, 3 or 4 of them by now, but Reverend Matthews with me? Are you with me?
Yes, sir. My thoughts to that is that the reason why I believe, one of the reasons why OG is not getting the support that he needs from the leaders in the city is because they concern, or someone is concerned about the kind of credibility it would give him, and recognition and empowerment that it would give him in terms of being influenced to people that he helped. I mean, this is one of those things that happens. I know when I was in prison and the chaplain was coming in and he missed a day and they had me to bring the message, the brothers went to the COs and said, we have our own chaplain. And that was refuted because they realized, or they thought maybe my voice would be a voice of influence that could create a problem for the institution. So,
I understand that, because Reverend Matthews, you can show and pray. I'm gonna have to throw that in. He can show and pray.
It's transportation and housing. And so what this brother brings, what this brother brings, Mike Adams through his company, is not only development, because we do believe that public safety and economics is a
Matthew's system is breaking
glove together. So he has a development friend, Mike Adams. Mike Adams, if you come on, brother, and share with us.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, I just to make sure it's not fading out.
Yeah, you're
good. Thanks for being a part of the panel. The part that we like to conclude to in our emphasis for the community is the job creation model. And when we interpret from our side of 24 years of real estate investing and development, and done, north of 150 projects in the private sector investment between Sunnyside, Third Ward, and areas as such, and north of 250 projects in total, is how to create the job and the economic impact that, in my opinion, creates the direct correlation of crime and the heinousness that we continuously see, because myself and Reverend Matthews have been talking about this probably north of 20 years at this point, and have watched certain seasons of the year where things continue to elevate. And now we're at the point where everything is kind of spiked out of control. So when you got that kind of element, and I've already personally mentored north of 50 people on my own dime to create, businessmen and women and incubator kind of processes. So when reaching out to all these sectors and components that tie into with this, we've created the mechanism to create 3,000 to 5,000 jobs, from the nonprofit 501(c) component, the veteran assisted living housing component that we've created and been running around buying vacant hospitals, nursing homes, land to develop out these kind of sites that way you can create the 3 shifts and the economics that go with that, with better job training, job creation, CNA, started as CNA, end up an RN, and now you have the economic impact. Then the creativity component of creating the opportunity zone funds, our own 2 opportunity zone funds that I've created, to where we'll raise millions of dollars in funding to allocate and appropriate toward these projects or tax reduction components. So along with our system, you have a job, but you'll learn the economic system to where now you can go home and start to teach this. And then now you create the economic impact, because we've done this and put a collective component of running around the world from China, Africa, Brazil, sorting material globally, all over the continental US, partnering up with private sector guys just to do projects. And that's in my wheelhouse and spirit to say, through great guys like Reverend Matthews, how do we make this work if we have to just do it ourselves? So we're going to the state entity, federal entities, city entities, grants, CDB, block grant, hub zone tips, enterprise, you name it, we know it. We can speak the language verbatim, but nothing has been done. So my dime has gotten it done. So some of the great things that we've been able to do, get $15 million worth of modular homes donated in 2010, the emergency management deal that we were prepared to do. Donating lots from the land bank, Laura Lot program until it switched over to land bank, and we can't get approved for some reason, but we were approved at one point. So other cities that we've got lots donated, a lot of global impact from China, Africa, other ways we can get our material vetted, sources sent over. So that makes our machine move. And I bought enough locations at this time between my hometown of Burnham, Warden Temple, Dallas, bought a vacant hospital, these kind of instruments to where we're saying, okay, we're going to create thousands of jobs. And then once this tool and vehicle is seen, then now the impact in the community of crime settles down, because a lot of it's stemming from, okay, I hate to be so blunt, but when they don't give a damn, now you got to deal with them. I've talked to a lot of young men. I have 2 young adult sons, and I've always kind of mentored their friends coming up to understand the disconnect that we have now, to where we had fear of mama and big mama. I call it big mama and them law. Now they don't care. It's a different day now. $50, they haven't thought about the consequence yet. So that's why now you see everybody carrying a gun, everybody shooting and bang. I'm trying to protect myself, because we have a system there where you have all these young adults that are angry, don't feel like they can get opportunities. A lot of my son, put them through school successfully. They got degrees from Sam Houston State Universities. And besides the company I set up for him, he's been successful in running his own construction division. None of the other ones with degrees have gotten a job. So it resonates to, we've watched about 15 of them die since they graduated from high school 6 years ago. And we watched all these kind of continuation that we see now is on steroids. It's even stopped us personally from going to certain communities doing projects. Now we're going back because it's like, okay, well, it is what it is, because we've dealt with that in our 24 years. So basically, it's a system that derives from a nonprofit 501(c)(3) construction, development, project management company, a system of assisted living facilities that we're doing, and we control and own all the operations. So that's our private sector component that we hope to eventually one day work with the city of Houston, the county, HUD, and entities like that, but we don't get the response. So we just kind of do it on our own. And we understand from the physical FYI budget, because we've been invited 3 years ago to DC on the backside of the White House for meetings and see and interpret how things get done, no matter who's in there, because I just want to get it done. I don't care if Bugs Bunny's in there personally, because when you're constantly looking at the cause of life, loss of life, and the pain and the imprisonment and the time and the heinousness of it, it's just boiled over, where I'm not going to continuously talk about it, because I'm always doing the action on whatever I can do on my dime. So it's great to be a part, and I appreciate panels like this, and would love to engage more you guys more and see how I can bring support through my, some of my wealthy friends and connection. Because it's like, at the end of the day, you just want it done. It's like 50 conversations doesn't help anymore, because they riding around right now with the pistol, and if they catch you at the right store, they want to work. They call that work. They gonna see you.
That's work.
That's work.
Well, you got Councilman Shabazz right here, as well as OG1. In terms of activity, because the piece you're talking about is the one which we started with as a people and kind of left. I like the idea of the ownership. In terms of my father was a subcontractor, and he always used to tell me, son, you need to know how to do something with your hands. And when once you made an OG made about the governor and gave everybody a gun, that ain't no shovel, that ain't no hammer. What is a gun going to do?
But the gun is what they not understanding. The gun is how they eat. That's how they think now. I'm going raw. That's how I get my bag. But we understand from an economic component. I'm an economist type, where $30 trillion moves in this country a year. You look at the money that's physically FY allocated from HUD through all of the different systems and protocols. We shouldn't even have to have this conversation. But it's always what creates the bottleneck. I just recently opened an office up in California, and I'm so amazed at how efficient you get calls back. We can't get calls back from the city of Houston. We can't get approved with entities that, our vision is to create $1 billion platform. We go to other states, gates wide open. Everything, here you go, how we can give you federal land, reserve land, all the complicated things that we understand, from elevation, development, retention ponds, building subdivision, creating townships. We understand all those all those components and are working on acquiring 700-800 tracks like that, where we reply water aquifers, levees, retention, because we understand the whole mechanism, the economics in it, that's driving revenue to the market. If you do a levee, that's a lot, that's billions coming. If you do retention ponds,
not to mention, Mike, guys like you who have your type of skill set and portfolio are looked over and you homegrown, and there's other people coming into our city and state getting access to those resources and those opportunities.
But
sorry, real quick, sir. But the whole component and within our circle of African American businessmen, most of them don't even try no more because it's known you're not going to get anything. And I always tell them, like, well, you can't think like that. And they're like, well, look who's in office. Look at the streets in their community. Look at our community. And we go all over the country. I've been invited to I'm leading a deal to put together a Black Wall Street deal in Oklahoma. It's the same thing in Houston. It's like a dark cloud when it comes to economics for African Americans and minorities. And it's known. And then we look at the power that be within nonprofit entities that get federal funds for certain projects, and we see who get that. So they even tell me, because I'm always at the Capitol talking with senators, congressmen in Austin and other states, they say, well, we allocate this for the minority community, but the minorities that in power turn around and give it to the Anglos and the Hispanics. So it doesn't reach the community. You're taking that dollar, because our dollar just circulates in our community and gone in 6 hours. So you get your paycheck, you're broke. The Chinese, the Hispanics, the Caucasian, they normally circulates 20-some days. So if the money is allocated to the Urban League, Community Block Grant, CDBG Fund, TIFs, enterprise zones, hub zones, all the component lines there, you're talking about billions of dollars allocated. I went to the Capitol because they say the Black politicians want to meet them with them on economics. I said, well, I'll come. And I went and met with them because we know economics will make them put down the gun, that if he can go to school and learn something and feel he got the opportunity, he will. My grandfather, one of the first licensed Black plumbers in the city of Houston over in Studewood. I'm out there roaming around in the younger days. I get shot with a 357. So I know the impact of the mind state of any component, how triggered it goes. In a homicide.
You got to wrap up, Dr. Gilmore.
Okay.
Like you're on the roll, man. You give some good information.
Look, this is part one of this discussion. We're going to have to go into part two, but I want to make sure I say to everybody the insight that you
got to wrap up.
Councilwoman Shabazz is here. She's been deeply involved over the years in terms of that education piece. And Ms. Evans, she is a councilwoman who will get some things done. I know right now the city is grappling with some issues based upon some transparency, some other realities that might be a factor in that. But in the case of us getting some help for us, like OG1 said, if he done knocked on every door, it's just us. So I want to say, first of all, thank you. There'll be a meeting put forth by Reverend Matthews in the very near future with some of these key players, and we'll invite them, but we're not going to be supportive of the idea of people not supporting us. And I want to say again, thank you to the Houston Media Source, Public Affairs, Public Access Show, been around over 30 years, give me an opportunity to help Mr. Charles X. White, one of our legendary community activists and leaders, and OG1, of course, Mr. Evans, just a fresh conversation about real-time money. And of course, the newly appointed program coordinator for the Houston Ministers Against Crime, Dr. Matthews. And I want to say to everybody, it's a blessing to be here as I report live from the Department of Veteran Affairs. Michael DeBakey, hope to get out real soon. Thank you very much to the audience. Stay tuned, part two is coming.